Hello friends, welcome to Civic Sense. I am Dr. Madhukar Shyam and today I am going to discuss with you all about the theory, politics or the philosophy developed by the realist school of thought over the period of time. So I will be discussing about the Hans Morgenthau's sixth principle. But before that, I would like to take you into the journey of realism or the evolution of realism in brief. Let me first tell you about that there are different school of thought within realism. So the first one is let us consider is as a traditional school of thought or traditional realist. Now second one is the classical realist, neoclassical realist and neo-realist. In all these school of thought, what we need to focus is that what changes took place from one school of thought to other. So with the time and space, scholars also evolved with the time and also brought some new perspective in realism itself. But realism have some core characteristics or philosophy which is continuing it since century. So let me first point out about the Thucydides or his Peloponnesian War, then Kautilya's Arthashastra and Sun Tzu's Art of War. So these scholars are considered as an traditional scholar or traditional realist. These scholars are very much agreeing on the common perspective that international system is anarchical. What is anarchy? Anarchy क्या होता है? Anarchy means there is no government over government. Let me just write for you. Anarchy means there is no government over government. Means all these scholars are agreeing on this common perspective that is international system is anarchic in nature. Second point is that one of the thing that I would like to highlight here is that लोगों को ये लगता है कि अगर हम रियलिज्म की बात कर रहे हैं तो रियलिज्म वॉर को फोर्स करता है, वॉर को एडवोकेट करता है और वॉर के लिए है ये. लेकिन रियलिज्म का भी ये पर्सपेक्टिव है, ये है कि हम किस तरीके से चीज़ों को सिक्योरिटाइज करें. ठीक है, किस तरीके से हम इस सिक्योरिटी, क्योंकि ये इंटरनेशनल सिस्टम क्या है, एनार्किक है. तो इन एनार्की, राइट, what is the common threat we have is right to we have to survive. Survival is the biggest threat. So since we have studied the Thomas Hobbes, in which we have studied Hobbes is talking about how the in the state of nature ki state of nature में किस तरीके से we have different human natures and human natures are very pessimist and this human nature is driving us towards the nature of the state. So human nature negative है, human nature अगर pessimist है, so what we need to do is we need to also understand the nature of state, and nature of state is driving from human nature itself. So human nature is important in realist school of thought. So keep this thing in your mind that there are scholars in traditional scholar. I mentioned the name of all these scholars. Just read little bit about them. I will be making separate video on each of these scholars because their writings are classical, and I will be giving you an knowledge on what is the current impact of these scholars. Just like I will tell you in brief about the Thucydides. Thucydides trap is a term that scholars are now using nowadays. In order to compare the rising power that is China and the already that is dominant power that is America. So the competition or the conflict between the America and China is also studied from the perspective of the Thucydides, and it is called Thucydides trap, right? So I will not go in detail. I will make separate video on each of them. For example, Matsya Nyaya theory was given, or Matsya Nyaya, the concept of anarchy was discussed by Kautilya, right? In the same way, we also are aware of that Sun Tzu is talking about the cost benefit analysis, how to go for the war and what to do in the war, what strategy one kingdom or one state should have while going in the war, how much resource one should utilize and invest in the war. So cost benefit analysis is well discussed by the Sun Tzu in his book Art of War. Next is that when we are coming to the classical realism, this realism is all about your First World War to Second World War. This was the time frame E.H. Carr is talking about in his book 20 Years Crisis between the two world war. So what was the situation, what was the challenges the world was facing between the two world war discussed in the book written by E.H. Carr. So I will request you to go through this book, read this book. And then George F. Kennan, the famous long telegram is written by him. Hans Morgenthau, he classified the entire realism into 6 different principles. So today we are going to cover this Hans Morgenthau principle. Once I will be discussing with you the classical aspect of realism, then I will be moving in नियोक्लासिकल रियलिज्म. तब हम लोग नियोक्लासिकल रियलिज्म में जाएंगे और गिडेन रोज, फरीद जकारिया, इन लोगों की कुछ राइटिंग्स को देखेंगे कि उनका कोर आर्ग्यूमेंट क्या है. आप देख सकते हैं कि ये जो टाइम है इसमें पोस्ट कोल्ड वार 1990s में रियलिज्म किस तरीके का है उसके बारे में बात कर रहे हैं. एंड देन न्यू रियलिस्ट आर ऑल्सो कंसिडर्ड एज अ स्ट्रक्चरल रियलिस्ट. और न्यू रियलिज्म में फर्दर क्लासीफाई करें तो केनेथ वॉल्ट जो है वो डिफेंसिव रियलिज्म में आते हैं और जॉन जे मियर समर जो है वो ऑफेंसिव रियलिज्म की बात करते हैं. रिसेंट में अभी जो आप युद्ध देख रहे हैं रशिया यूक्रेन का, उसको मियर सेमर ने अच्छे से डिफाइन किया है, एक्सप्लेन किया है. इन्होंने जो किताब लिखा है उसका नाम है ट्रेजेडी ऑफ ग्रेट पावर पॉलिटिक्स. सो इट इज़ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू रीड सम ऑफ द बुक्स, इफ नॉट ऑल. So read some classical text. These books are very easy. These book will help you in understanding the history of international politics and theory of international politics. As I mentioned in my previous video also, that theory will help you in understanding the concept in a comprehensive way. Theory will help you in understanding the explanation of any core concepts, right? So to explain, merely knowing the facts will not help you in explaining the concepts, right? So anyone can explain that okay, these are these facts by telling you in the chronology, but if you are aware of the theory, you will analyze them in a very systematic manner, or you will further say that okay, this is what the prediction or this is what is going to happen, as done by John Meyer Semmer before Russia-Ukraine war. Now let me move to the second part. I will be discussing in detail later on, not now. So one of the statement, let me just highlight here, is that Thucydides sometime he wrote that what is right matter only between equals. What is right matters only between equals means to say that the equal powers, just like think of P5. P5 are nowadays equal power, right? So equality is among P5, that whatever nuclear they can try, whatever policy they can make on nuclear is not equal to the non-nuclear country, right? Therefore India is protesting, right? This is just an example. I will not go in more examples. I will just discuss the concept, right? So Thucydides' concept is still relevant. Otherwise what he is saying, strong do what they can and weak suffer what they must. You see the example of NPT. NPT fits with this notion what Thucydides is saying, that weak, they are signing NPT. Strong, that is P5, they are equals, they are not signing P5, they are not signing NPT. They are into the club of forcing other to sign NPT. They are making the rules, they are setting the agendas. So I will be discussing later on this Sun Tzu's book Leviathan, as I also discussed that human nature. Whenever you are aware of Leviathan, then human nature, he is saying that human nature is very negative in the state of nature, as I mentioned recently. So this book Politics Among Nations, written by Hans J. Morgenthau. तो मॉर्गेनथॉ की ये जो बुक है, इसके 6 प्रिंसिपल्स है, इसको आज हम लोग पढ़ने वाले हैं और इसको हम लोग समझने वाले हैं. So what politics among nation it is talking about? The thing I have already discussed, that is the anarchical system in international politics, and survival of a state is the primary thing. You can take here as an example how Israel is surviving with the enemy all around the Israel, right? Now the first principle of Hans Morgenthau, that is let me just read out for you, that politics among politics like society in general, politics like society in general is governed by objective laws, right? What he is saying? Objective laws. Politics, like society in general, is governed by objective laws that have their root in human nature. This objective law have their root in human nature, and human nature is unchanging. Therefore, I emphasized on human nature. So, human nature which is unchanging. If human nature is unchanging, so the entire realist philosophy of Hans Morgenthau is based on this human nature. समझे? ह्यूमन नेचर जो है वो चेंज नहीं हो रहा है ना. ह्यूमन नेचर बहुत ऑप्टिमिस्टिक नहीं है इनका, ठीक है, लेकिन ह्यूमन नेचर चेंज नहीं हो रहा है. तो जब चेंज नहीं हो रहा है और ह्यूमन नेचर बहुत ऑप्टिमिस्टिक नहीं है, तो व्हाट वी नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड कि इस थ्योरी में जो स्टेट होगा या ह्यूमन का नेचर जो है वो अपने आप को सर्वाइव करने के लिए, अपने सेल्फिशनेस के लिए बात करता है. तो स्टेट भी अपने सर्वाइवल, अपने सेल्फिशनेस की बात करेगा, स्टेट अपने इंटरेस्ट की बात करेगा. राइट, they are talking about objective laws, right? Now, second principle, very important. The main signpost of political realism is the concept of interest, right? The main signpost of political realism is the concept of interest, defined in terms of power. Now, you see that interest defined in terms of power. In this, what author is trying to say, or what Morgenthau is trying to say, is that whatever your interest or long-term interest, but your immediate interest is your power. Your interest is defined by power, whether it is India, whether it is China, whether it is America, Britain. All of these countries are fighting for power, right? Whatever their long-term interest, that is not the matter, but immediate interest is the power. So the interest is defined in terms of power. Fine. Now, the main signpost of political realism is the concept of interest defined in terms of power, which infuses rational order into the subject matter of politics and thus makes the theoretical understanding of politics possible. Political realism is stress on rational, objective and unemotional. See, he is categorically mentioning that don't be emotional. While taking decision, don't be emotional. See the facts. When you are talking about the objectives, you just take the facts, you just analyze the facts and you take the decision, rather than you are going into or adding some values into it. So keep these three terms: rational, what is going to be benefit, cost benefit analysis; objective, what is given out there, we are not going to change that, no ethics, no morality, what is given out there, we need to work within the given frame, right, within the given space. Now, next is that unemotional. You don't need to think about, okay, this is the relatives, or this is not the relatives, or this is our neighboring country, this is our extended neighbor. No need to think in such way. Just think that in our Srimad Bhagavad Gita also, this is what said, that you need to focus on your work. You don't need to be emotional, right? This is the war of Mahabharata, right? So it is already mentioned in our philosophy also, but as per the syllabus, we are also reading the scholars from the Western political thought or Western philosophers on realism. Now, the third principle, realism assumes that interest defined as power is an objective category which is universally valid, but not with a meaning that is fixed once and for all. Means power is ultimate goal, right? Power is universally truth. But what I am going to do with power, what India is going to do with power, what US is going to do with power, what China is going to do with power is not fixed. Their meaning might change, right? Their meaning might change, but every country needs power. See the statement again. Realism assumes that interest defined as power is an objective category, which is universally valid, but not fixed, not with a meaning that is fixed once and for all. So what we need to do here is that we need to understand that power is ultimately truth, power is universally valid, and but with time and space its meaning changes, right? What is power? Power is a control over man over man, means state over another state in international politics. Let us now jump into the fourth principle of Hans Morgenthau. What is the fourth one? Fourth one is political realism is aware of moral significance of political action. What he is saying? Moral significance of political action. Now think of. moral, ethics, right? Moral significance means if you are taking any decisions, how much it is going to impact morally or ethically on others, right? So what is saying, political realism is aware of moral significance of political action, right? Any political action, what kind of moral or ethical decision or what kind of impact is going to happen on others, right? Now, but it is also aware the tension between moral command and requirement of successful political action. Now think of this: moral command and requirement of successful political action. This is the tension. This is the tension that is between moral command and political action. I told you that I will not be giving you much examples, but let me just point out here is that if you are aware of American politics when World War was about to end, then we came to know that there is some bomb called bomb that dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And this is decision taken by Truman, Harry S. Truman as a president, right? So he took a decision to drop atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which of course led to the death of around 1 lakh civilian. So this decision to win the war, right, was political action was to win the war, right? But the moral command was anybody in the world. I don't think that anybody in the world are ready to kill this much number of people, right? This is the moral or ethical thing, that ethical command that is coming in the mind of the leader. But what leader need to do? Leader have to listen the political action, because after having the political action, that decisions might be rude, might be harsh, but according to Morgenthau, that decision are leaders are forced to take such decisions. Now next point is that political realism refused to identify the moral aspiration of particular nation with a moral laws that govern the universe. मान लीजिए कि किसी भी देश में, जैसे भारत है या फिर कोई भी देश है, वो अब बात कर रहा है कि नहीं बुद्धिज्म को, गांधीज्म को हम प्रमोट कर रहे हैं, सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं, एडवोकेट कर रहे हैं, राइट? पैसिफिस्ट होना चाहिए हर चीज, राइट? बट दिस पैसिफिज्म और दिस पीस, what political realism is talking about, refuse to identify the moral aspiration of particular nation. मान लीजिए उस कंट्री का moral aspiration है, अगर वो दिखा रहा है, but you don't need to accept that. Might be that might be for the time being. That is not moral laws that governs the universe. This is what political realists are refused to identify. Political realism के लिए ये morality और ethical चीज है वो acceptable नहीं है. It is a concept of interest defined in terms of power that shapes the moral excess or political folly. That is lack of taking good judgment, right? Let me come to the next point, that is the sixth principle. I am giving you in the brief discussion because this is the basic understanding. If you will have basic understanding, then I will move to the advanced level of the theoretical understanding with some articles written by the scholars. Political realists maintain the autonomy of political sphere. He asks, how does policy affect the power of the nation? Political realism is based on pluralistic conception of human nature. A man who has nothing but a political man would be a beast, or he would completely lacking the moral restraint. Real man is a composite of economic man, political man, or moral man, religious man, and so on. Means to say that political realism is on what is a plural, right? It is talking about there is different diversity, plural conception of human nature. It is not focusing on the one aspect of human nature, right? He is saying that man should be political realism maintain the autonomy of political sphere, that in the political sphere it should not be only be dominated by one group. Political sphere should be covered, or could be the people from all the dimension, all the group of people, from political person, religious person, ethical person. but not from only one dimension. Just think of any moral person. He may not take good decisions while going on the war and so on. Completely political person is also, they might become the authoritarian and create problem for the others. So a complete man is one who is having the idea of economy, who is having the idea of social, political, every type of things should cover. So what he is saying that political realism maintain the autonomy of political sphere. I hope you are able to understand these 6 principles, and then we will also tell you about how to understand the application of these principles in the foreign policy class. Or so keep watching these videos, and if you have any questions, please come with your questions. Let me just give you some of those points so that you will able to understand. If you want to note down, you can. Now, if you want to note down, you can note down these points. This is the first principle in which I discussed about the objective laws. Then there is another one in which I am talking about that political realism is a concept of interest defined in terms of power. If you want to note down, you can note down this. Political realism is stress on rational, objective, and unemotional part, right? Next is political realism assumes the interest defined as power is an objective category which is universally valid. But highlight this point where I have highlighted, just highlight that also, that not with the meaning that is fixed once and for all. सभी के लिए एक जैसा पावर का कॉन्सेप्ट नहीं है, ठीक है? Then here you will also find that political realism is aware of moral significance of political action. But the tension, just highlight this term tension, right? And tension between what? Moral command and requirement of successful political action. Now, 5th point, refuse to identify the moral aspiration of particular nation or moral laws that governs the universe. So, political realists are not agreeing on that there is something or in this universe that is governed or that is governing or that is ethically or morally governing, right? So moral और ethical चीजों से ये थोड़ा सा अपने आप को साइड रख रहे हैं. Now 6th principle, you can just note down this. So इसमें क्या बात हो रही है, that autonomy of political sphere. Political sphere में ये नहीं कि किसी एक ग्रुप का, किसी एक टाइप ऑफ एजुकेशन या एक टाइप ऑफ लोगों का, मीन्स पॉलिटिकल हो या इकोनॉमिक हो, ये एक सभी का मिल के होना चाहिए. दिस इज व्हाट पॉलिटिकल स्फीयर में ये बात कर रहे हैं. सो विद दिस लेट मी जस्ट टेल यू, इफ यू वांट टू हैव मोर क्वेश्चंस, इफ यू हैव एनी क्वेरीज, डू come with your questions and share on the comment box, and subscribe to our channel. Thank you.